G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Trewin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Doug Taylor from Taylor Chip, based in Lancaster, USA. Thanks for your time today, Doug.
Hey, thank you for allowing me to be here.
Let's start with how we know each other. Maya from Rare Relations reached out a few months ago and thought you'd be a great guest to come on. I had a look at your website and your business, and I'm really excited to talk about your journey. It looks fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, no, I'm excited to be here. I've loved getting to know you here before this, and excited to learn from you as well.
We'll tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
So we are a dessert experience brand. Started out with just cookies, moved to coffee, and now we are launching, launched our ice cream, which took us about 4 years to get off the ground. And that's what we do. We're in retail. We do retail, we do CPG, and we do wholesale as well as our own manufacturing and e-commerce.
Right. And CPG, that's consumer packaged goods, is it?
That's correct. Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, great. And how many retail locations have you got at the moment?
So we are grand opening number 6 in Center City, Philadelphia, this Saturday. And then in about 2 weeks from now, we'll have another grand opening in another section of Philadelphia. So we'll be at 7.
Yeah, fantastic. And so what cities are you in?
So all in Pennsylvania. So we have our Lancaster store. We have a Harrisburg store, which is Pennsylvania's capital. We have a Hershey store, which is right near Hershey Park, Hershey chocolate. Everybody knows that. We have one in Gordonville, which is the town is called Intercourse, Pennsylvania, which works great for improving our ROAS. And then we have our 2 Philly stores, and that is, did I miss one? I don't know. Oh, York, Pennsylvania. So all within the Pennsylvania area. And then we're branching out to those main Philly stores as like the model going forward. Inner city, we'd love to go to like Georgetown eventually and New York City and all of that. So this is a test.
Fantastic. So you've got growth aspirations to get out of Pennsylvania.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. As soon as possible, basically. I mean, we just, and Philly's like the biggest city in Pennsylvania. And it's really one of the hardest cities in America to do business in because it's like a union town. And so it took us quite a while to figure out the politics of the city and understand the lay of the land and how to get open there. And now that we've kind of gotten through that, we've learned a ton and we feel a lot more confident as long as the numbers show up, as long as people show up for us and the numbers work on those retail stores, we're pretty confident in our model going forward. And obviously we're going to keep getting better and better, but yeah, super excited about the Philly ones.
Yeah, I love Philadelphia. I was there in 1998 for some training for the one and only job I ever had after uni, before starting my own companies. Yeah, great city.
Yeah, it is. It's very nice. The city of brotherly love.
And how did you start out?
So my wife and I started making cookies when we were dating. So I was eating a Crisco-based cookie, and Sarah's like, and I loved it, and it was my friend's mom's recipe, and yeah. It was my favorite cookie ever. And Sarah's like, you can't have this cookie. It's bad for you, bad for your heart, all that stuff. And I was like, well, then we have to make, if we're using butter, because Lancaster County is all about butter, farms, etc., natural. And she grew up on a farm originally until her parents got divorced. But like they used to have cows and stuff. And so she's all about, using just as natural stuff as possible. And so I said, okay, well, I'm not going to stop eating the cookies, especially not this one. It's my favorite. And so we got to replace it. We'll just replace the recipe with butter. And it did not work. And so that led us to like a year and a half long of just like, we would bake cakes together. We would bake everything, but we really got stuck on perfecting the chocolate chip cookie. It took us over a year. And in the meantime, we kind of really fell in love. We ended up getting engaged, and then we did taylorchip.com, which is our website. It was actually our wedding registry website. And so, because we were becoming the Taylors, and then we used the chocolate chip cookie as our wedding favors because we didn't have any money. Our parents, neither of our parents had enough money to really support the wedding venture that we were having. And so we needed to keep the cost low. And so we made huge 6 ounce ish cookies that fit into CD sleeves. And we handed them out to all our guests as like the wedding favors. And the registry was on taylorchip.com. And that's basically how we got started. $50 mixer off of Facebook Marketplace and just made some cookies. And then people liked them enough to ask us to make more.
That's fantastic. What year did you start the business and how old were you?
So, oh, was that? Well, August of 2018. I'm 31 now. January 28th is my birthday. So I would have been 34, right? Or I mean 24. 24. I would have been 24, I guess, when we officially started it. Met my wife in 2014 and we started making cookies as like a hobby and just things to do over in 2015. And so, but officially we quit our jobs, went from a side hustle to a real hustle. Um, in August of 2018, we quit our jobs basically the beginning of August.
Great. And do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business over the last 5 years?
Yes. So our first full year in business, 2019, we did 200,000. We then did 800,000. We then did 2.7 million, and then we did 4 million. And then we kind of grew too fast without any automation and all of that stuff. And then there was a huge change in iOS and marketing. We were in a pre iOS 13 era and just soaking in as much, all the 10 ROAS as we could to grow. And so
Wow.
when that shifted, there was a huge shift in how we did our marketing. And so there was a lot to figure out. So basically, last year is when we saw a lot of the effects from that change. And so we dropped down profitably to 3 million. And now this year we're going to reach up to around 5 million this year because we automated, we systemized, we needed to fire a lot of bad people and hire a lot of good people. And so it was just a learning experience, but I'm very proud of what we did. We increased the net profit even though we shrunk and just became a better, stronger business. And now, hopefully, this year we'll get to in the fives, and next year it past the tens.
That's great. And for the audience, ROAS is return on ad spend. So for every dollar you put in, you were getting $10 back. That's amazing.
$7 to $10. Yeah, yeah, yep. And I mean that was during the COVID age too. I mean, there was a time when we were doing cold acquisition on customers for in between 50 cents to a dollar. I remember if it got up past $5 for a new customer to spend $50 with us, I turned the ad off and I'm like, oh, I need a new creative. So that's kind of the secret. I think a lot of gurus and marketers really want to lean into like how they built their business, and they forget to mention that like the ad landscape was completely different back in 2020, or like back in 2020 and beyond that. And so like a lot of people built their business on a system that no longer exists, whereas now you're very close to the old adage of like 50% of my marketing works. I just don't know what 50% does. And so you really need to go wide and be very meticulous about your creatives, about your what you're doing. You're organic. You need a strong organic presence as well to stay profitable. And so there's just a lot more to it. But we've risen to the task. I think business is always going to throw you some hurdles. So you just have to rise to the task and get it done.
Yeah, John Wanamaker, I love that. It's about 100 years old, that quote. 50% of my advertising
Yeah, it
waste. I
is.
don't know which 50%.
Yep, yep. And it wasn't true for a good 15 years. It was not a true quote for a good 15 years, but it's pretty true again.
Yeah. And how many full-time equivalents did you and Sarah start the business with, and where are you at now?
So we started the business with no full time, and now we're at about 42 full time equivalents, right around there. And that's growing because we're opening up more locations pretty rapidly now.
Yep. So would you say the two of you started it, when you jumped in 2018, seriously, quit your jobs? Was it both full-time then?
Yeah, both full time. Yep, we quit our jobs and didn't. I had a recording studio. I did music and stuff in the past, and that's how I learned a lot of marketing and branding and all that. But like, um, it was a very part time. It might have been like a 15 to $20,000 a year type of endeavor. But yeah,
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
I'll let you know, right? That's yeah. I I would say in general, I think any good entrepreneur or anyone with like a serious amount of ambition would say that they still haven't succeeded because there's always so much more to do. I think, yeah, that's about my answer there.
All right, yeah, I think I have to remove that question because more than half the guests answer that way. But it also highlights to me an affliction I have, which I think a lot of people who answer that way do, is that I'm just really shithouse at celebrating successes. So if I don't put things in place, milestones, like we've got a couple at Grow a Small Business. So for example, recently we just, as I said, before hit record, just moved from 1.5 in the top 1.5% to 1% podcasts in the world. So, top 31,000. So we've had that stake in the ground for a while. Otherwise, I would have just, right, what's the next mountain we're climbing? So we've got, going out for a nice lunch to celebrate that. So I think it's important, more so for the team than me. I don't really care, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that is a huge milestone. I love celebrating like having kids. I have a daughter now and we're gonna be starting for our second one soon. So like there's a lot to celebrate when it comes to family and relationship. But when it comes to business or like even myself, like I look at myself and say like, man, you're a piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like you could be doing so much better than you are. Come on, you have it in you. And so that's kind of like I think that's just the conundrum we all kind of face to a certain extent. And so and then at this stage too of business, I feel like every type of success has to do with maybe monetary. And for me, monetary isn't really my motivation. I love what we're doing with our business in a sense that like we have 500,000 followers on social. We're getting to meet a lot of like the politicians around us and just like having a big impact on the community and continuing to have that impact grow. But like the reason I think in general, if you want to build to like a billion plus, you need to have more than a monetary type of goal. And so like from a monetary goal, it was like the first time I got a Lamborghini. Like that was kind of like a cool feeling that wore off after like 2 days. But like that was like something that I remember telling my grandma when I was 3 years old that I would do. And she's like, "Oh, honey, those are very expensive, right?" Like it's like the come back to reality here, little kid type of thing. And I just remembering that conversation with my grandma, which who I loved, like actually being able to do that in my 20s and actually being able to accomplish like buying a $300,000 car when my dad never made more than $40,000 a year. I think that was really cool. But I've since I went through like three Lamborghinis at that whole phase, and I've since sold them, and now I like driving my 1990 Camry still again. So it's like you get those little perks of like things, but it's not really why you're building anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah, and
Then what does success look like to you?
I I really what's near and dear to my heart. My mom was a single mom, and she also experienced a lot of sexual abuse growing up, and just ended up doing drugs and all of those things, and just like was on meth for years. And so I think one of my things is being able to continue to take care of her as her health dwindles pretty rapidly. That's a that's success. But then also we we always support different adoption type of funds and different things like that. And we some families who are trying to adopt, and because my dad, my birth dad left us, but my dad then adopted me legally, and that caused the family in general to go into debt. And so I think one of the things that really would be success to me is if in America we can eventually someday work towards I would love to make the adoption process more streamlined and cheaper and safer. And so that's one of the things that I'm working towards, and that would be success to me if we could get adoption to be under $5,000 or something like that. That's one of my long term goals. Obviously, you have to build a big company to do that, and I think business is how you get there. But yeah, that would be success. I think.
What does it cost at the moment in the US for adoption?
Man, it's like 35 to 45,000.
Wow, holy shit.
And it's just so much red tape and it's just so evil. I mean, it's just like and there's all these stipulations and so a lot of people foster to adopt, but then you have the fear of you're 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 saving a kid from this horrible home life, and the mom has already agreed, but then they have this right to get. So it's just like, and then you also have the question is like, do you want the mom to take the kid back because that is the mom? And so there's just all these different stresses that come with that. And also, that's like even for my dad who married my mom and then wanted to, do what he felt was right, which was to adopt us. It was extremely taxing on their finances, and they never really recovered for years from it. And so, just to not to have people like there's genuine people. The amount of money that you make shouldn't dictate whether or not you can afford to adopt someone. So I think there's just a lot of bloat in the system. I do love kind of what Elon Musk is planning to do as far as like getting rid of some of the bloat. That seems not to get political or anything, but that seems like a good idea, and hopefully some of that goes down to the adoption side. But yeah, so our heart has always been to as much as we can. You can only do so much, but like we'll do different fundraisers where we raise like 5 grand for like funds that help with transitioning, help support people who are fostering or different things like that. And so, yeah, and I think there's a lot of abuse happens in the system. My grandmother, both her parents died, and she grew up in the system. So it's just yeah. So that's something that's always been on my heart.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Top thing I would say is make sure you're focusing on your organic social media strategy, and if at all possible, dive deep into TikTok Shop. TikTok Shop is at the same opportunity if you can dial it in as ads were in 2012. It's like right now, like TikTok in America is signing leases to do fulfillment, kind of like Amazon is doing. And so you look at like what people built empires off of the Amazon platform just by being first. And so right now, I think if you are starting from zero, I would spend all my time on TikTok. I would look at what's selling really good on TikTok Shop. I would create products like that. I'd find white label options and just really use a product that has a low cost to get started to learn how to scale on TikTok Shop using influencers and stuff like that, because you have 5 years of like TikTok trying to beat out Amazon, 5, 10 years maybe. And that's your biggest opportunity, I think, from a marketing standpoint.
I haven't kept up with it. I thought the US was banning TikTok.
They may be. I mean, they always change their minds. I don't know. You can,
Yeah.
yeah. If you're in the U.S., I mean, you can always change your IP address
Yeah.
and keep doing it.
And how did you fund your business?
So we funded our business just with cash. I mean, that's really what it came down to. When that initial stand cost us about 15,000, and we had a little less than 5,000 in savings, and then we used like interest free credit cards, right? So you have credit cards that have interest free for like the first year or 2 years or whatever. So we applied for like 5 of those credit cards, and we got like 2 of them, and that was enough to fund the startup of the business. And then we paid all that stuff back within 3 months, and then we would just cash flow ever since then up until this year. As we start to grow faster with retail, we've been getting term loans tied to different retail locations.
Yep. Right. And as we were talking about beforehand, because you're looking at raising funds at the moment to grow.
Yep. So now forward focusing, we are looking to raise funds at the moment. We were talking about doing a crowdfunding thing, which is something that I've considered, but I just haven't taken the consideration super seriously. You probably changed my mind, but I would say, yeah, it's like I've been interviewing a lot of venture people, a lot of private equity angels, and trying to figure that out. I know how to talk to banks really well. I know how to talk to the state and get grants and different things like that. But the whole VC, everybody wants a different story to a certain extent. So I'm still learning what that story is.
Yeah, as I said before we hit record, one of the issues with VC, venture capitalists or private equity is that they generally have a 5 to 7 year window that they want their money back and like 5 times return. And that's a lot of pressure. Whereas, I mean, you told me how big your email is, which is huge. You'd only need 2,000, a few thousand people from your list to invest based on what the average person invests in a crowd fund to hit the number that you're, raising. So I really encourage you to think about it. As I said, I'll send you through podcasts I've done with those that have done a crowdfund, and I've got a folder with over 200 investment memorandums on crowdfunds, which I'll send to you as well with a summary sheet. You can,
Super excited.
yeah, as I said, I've been involved in a few crowdfunds. One, March 2023, a gin and vodka distillery in Western Australia. We raised the maximum we're going for, $2.7 million in 19 hours. And as I said to you, the other great thing is you're getting brand ambassadors. It's another sales channel. So if part of their investment they get make 10% off if in store, then they keep coming back and back. And there's a brewery in New Zealand that I went and met with before we did a crowdfund over there for our whiskey company in 2018. I met with Parrot Dog out of Wellington, and they just raised. They had 800 shareholders. They got the maximum 2 million. And I asked, "Isn't the AGM a pain in the ass, or like having 800 small shareholders?" And Dan, the ops manager, said, "No, that's great because the AGM's a giant piss up. It's cash positive. Our shareholders come in, they get 10% off in the bar. They take slabs of beer away, and it's another sales channel as well. And it's just great marketing doing a crowdfund.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
No, I would not. I definitely would not. Our industry has changed a lot since I started it, and I would say it's an extremely hard start now. There was nobody doing big cookies like we do. There might have been two people. Well, no, well, like I think there was like one brand in New York City or something that was around doing big cookies. We didn't even know about them though, and so there was no competition. We had 3 years, 2 years of no competition, and then Crumble came and they went the franchise route and more. Despite their product not being good, they got their franchising documents together and their funding together right as COVID was happening. So they had already sold about 200 stores going into COVID. And so they just had the perfect timing to like explode. And what people realized is they would go in, they'd experience these cookies and they say, oh, they're horrible. No offense. I mean, they're okay, right? Like, and they're like, I can make so much better of a cookie, and these guys are printing money. I can do the same thing, and rightfully so, they can, or they thought they could, and now, so then you have 30,000 businesses starting cookie companies overnight, and so it for us, we were already semi-established and kind of had, so we have a head start, but I would not go and start making the cookies again. And for us too, we also saw how easy it was for us to start making cookies, which is why from the very beginning we started working on ice cream and coffee to build in a whole dessert experience. Because ice cream, it's more difficult to manufacture and process dairy in the US than it is to do pharmaceutical. So there's
Wow.
higher a lot higher barrier to entry, but also it's just a unique product too. So I feel really good about that going into the future. And then we do have a solid cookie. But yeah, if I was going to do another business, again, I actually started doing a marketing company the same time as like a way to, hedge my downsides when we started Taylor Chip. And so I'd probably still be doing that. I would do HVAC. I think if I was to do another business, just off the top of my head, I'd probably do HVAC because you have the service side, but then you also have the product side, and you don't need targeting because everybody needs it. So you can go far and wide for cheap with like lead gen campaigns and billboards and stuff like that, and really acquire customers quickly. That's probably what I would do if I had to guess.
Yeah, Crumble did a pop-up launch in Sydney at the end of 2024, and they got a lot of flack in the media. Exactly what you said. The people paid a lot for these cookies, and they weren't that great.
Yeah, yep, yep. So I don't know how they're gonna. I'm interested to see how they work around the world as they try to scale that around the world. Because in America, I feel like to a certain extent, we'll eat anything because we just have a lower like European countries have such a higher standard of ingredients. And that's actually something we fight against in the US because we don't use natural flavors. We use extracts. We don't use dyes. We use spironella or like blue butterfly pea flower or like all these other things. And so people will come, especially people in Hershey, right? They'll come and they'll say, oh, your cookies are too sweet, or oh, your cookies are not sweet enough. And what they're not realizing is they've been taught sweetness comes from natural flavor, and it's all this false sweetness, and that false sweetness that like they're faking their brains and their tongues into thinking that it's sweet using these natural flavors and horrible things and red dyes and all the craps. that is not allowed in other countries. And so then they come and experience something real and it's perceived as not sweet enough or it's perceived as too sweet because they're just used to something different. And so that's something that I think our brand, we've really thought about it globally, like what ingredients are allowed all over the world. And so when we get to the point where we're able to scale to like the Australians or the Dubais or the UKs, like we've already got the ingredients that people are used to over there. And so in the same way, that also is a solid differentiator for us over here.
Yep. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Now, I think we signed two. We've always only signed one lease at a time for retail because it's a big commitment. And we decided to build out a pipeline, but the pipeline did not end up working out. And we ended up having to build two stores at once just because of timelines and city issues and permit delays. And so not only did we have to do two stores at once, but they've been the two most expensive stores we've ever built because of them both being in a major city. And it was just not planned. It was not, we planned, we had enough money, but now we did not. And so we ran out of money recently, probably like four times, where we've had to find like, we've had to, well, thankfully we hadn't pulled from like any of our loan options. So like we use Square or we like Shopify because have such good sales on Shopify. We had like, we were able to take like a $200,000 loan at a fixed 8%. So the total money only cost us $13,000 to take 200,000. It was like a no brainer.
Wow.
Um,
Mm.
but we got lucky with that because we never had to use loans. So we had all these other little like cheap opportunities to take and collect. And now and there's been so many times throughout the last like 6 months where I'm like, it's just been so stressful where I'm like, I think we're very close to bankruptcy, right? Like, not, that's what you tell yourself. It's like, but then you also tell yourself, you know what? Hey, either way, we're getting a B. Billions or bankrupt, we're doing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I would say the most stressful time has been now. And so, what I've learned from that is one, if you're going into a new market, you need to at least in my business, meet your contractor first. Have a contractor lined up who you trust, like get to know somebody, especially if you're trying to do it cheaper. You need to spend time in the bars or wherever you need to find those subs and different things like that. And then also understand, hey, if you're going into a union town like Philadelphia, which I call the mob laughingly, but like if you're going into a union town, and you're not planning on using union work, you're going to have hangups. And so you have to be prepared for that too. So there's just like, I just wouldn't have known any of that stuff going forward. So I'm glad we did it. I think we built resiliency as a business, as a couple, as a personally, like the only way to grow your, your ability to take risk is just to take risk. And so glad we did it, but that's what I would say. Most stressful time is just like jumping in head first with your eyes closed and then realizing where you are. But I think also to a certain degree, that's the only way you learn.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Finance. When I started our business, I did not even know what a P&L was. I was just an artist. I had a recording studio. I was into Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop and Premiere Pro and editing videos and making album art and making branding and websites and stuff like that. And I had no clue what a dollar sign was, essentially. And so one of our fractional CFO has like a dual major from Wharton. He spent a lot of time teaching me. I doing the raise, I've had to learn how to build projections, read projections, all of that stuff. I mean, that's been my weakest link this whole time. And so it's been the thing that over the last 2 years, I've focused the most on. And so I've really come a long, long, long way. But that's definitely finance. It was always the weakest thing. But I think it's going to be my strongest someday soon.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
There's a certain level of stress to it. You do it to yourself because no one's out there telling you have to grow this fast. It's really just you in your head in bed at night thinking like I should be doing way more. Um, so I think it's just under learning how to understand the stress. And I am actually not naturally a risk taker. And so, but I've learned how to stop thinking about the gravity of the risk that I'm taking. And so I forced myself into learning how to manage stress better because I put myself in the place where it's like this is literally all or nothing. Like we've bet the farm now 3 times in the business to where we've saved up and run out of money completely. But each time we bet the farm, like for instance, when we bet the farm the first time, we went from $800,000 to 2.7 the next year, right? And that was the second time we bet the farm. But now and then we kind of been riding off the coattails of the success of that bet back in 2000, back in 2021. And so we knew we had to take we knew we wanted to get to 10 million, and we knew that what we were doing wasn't going to get us there. And so we just made a conscious decision that like we had, by all means, we have to feed the business. And so we did. And we're like, cash flow is going to cover it. And when it doesn't, we'll figure it out. And I think it's going to pay huge dividends over the next year. And it already has started. So it's great.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
One, building the team. Um, no, I know most of the people on our team, all the senior level people, and we really have a good relationship with them. And it's incredible to go into the office, the culture, all of that. And then two, the opportunity to build a large business. Building a small business is the opportunity to build a large business. And so that like carrot that you dangle in front of you every day is just what's exciting.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
There's been so many mindset shifts. I think one of the biggest, and you're still dealing with that because I did not grow up with money at all. I mean, there were years where I was trying to figure out my life and I made $20,000 the whole year. And you go from that to making like 800,000 take home. And even though, there's plenty of people watching this that probably take home 100 million a year or whatever it is, for when you go from zero to that, there is like your brain can't really, at least my brain couldn't really register it. And I saved literally every penny.
Mhm.
And then when it still kept happening, then I got a little looser, and then you're like, it was almost like you were discovering who you are because people would think about you differently, or like people would make fun of you or like we're in a very small town too. And so the fact with how big we've grown, how fast, we get a lot of criticism on like Reddit or something like that. And so you're like, and it's just like people that are mad at you because their lives are miserable. And so you look at what they're saying, you're like, is that me? And you're like, realize it's not. And so there's just, I think overall, um, you just have, it's just, you have to be very aware of who you are yourself and consistently be checking in on yourself. And so that's been kind of the biggest change and challenge, I guess.
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Discipline. I mean, like in all aspects of life, I like gym, finances, um, family. Um, I think you need discipline and everything, and then I think you need to understand how to train your brain because I try to seek out what I hate the most out of the business and become the best at that, become the expert at that, and so that takes a certain amount of stamina and discipline in itself. So I would just say in general, discipline with all aspects.
Are you a small business owner who is ready to take your professional growth to the next level? Sign up to the Grow a Small Business Weekly newsletter. This is your go-to email every Friday and will take about 2 minutes to read. Join the Grow a Small Business community who, like you, are investing in their professional development. Each week, we curate valuable resources, whether it's expert advice, books, podcasts, industry insights, or actionable strategies. We've got you covered. Leave your email at growasmallbusiness.com/weekly.
Now you've got a team of 42 full-time equivalents. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Yeah. One, so I would say during the interview process, when we were still interviewing, we don't interview anymore unless it's for a senior level position. Um, the biggest thing that I would say is how to how to find the good people is during the interview process, we look for them to be open about themselves. In America, W-2 employees have most of the protections versus the business does not. And so you are taking a huge risk bringing on a new W-2 employee, bringing on somebody onto the payroll. Um, so how I think about it is I want to see people who are going to take the same amount of risk on us. So are they going to be open and transparent about their hobbies, their pastimes, things that are not related to work? Who are they as a person? And a lot of times you can't really, as the employee, you can't really ask that. And so you ask leading questions. And through and through, when people are not transparent and not open about who they are or their extracurriculars or like what they like to do, if they're not going to be open and transparent with you, they're usually not going to be a good employee. But if they do show some transparencies, they're kind of an open book. They seem genuine, a nice person. You're going to have a lot better experience with them as an employee. So that's one of the things. I think we had a Chick-fil-A mentor for a long time when we first got started, just somebody who we knew who owned a Chick-fil-A. And he said, he jokingly said, of course, like if I wouldn't let my employees babysit my kids, I wouldn't hire them. And that is pretty true because during COVID and 2021, when the workforce was really down and it was hard to find people, we did end up kind of hiring anybody we could, and they completely destroyed our culture. They orchestrated a walkout and left me and Sarah and a few good people to do all of the work during like the main holidays, or it happened again when we were opening up a new location. And so it's just so, but that's always a blessing because you realize like that teaches you, which my other main point about hiring is one, you cannot hire or fire out of fear. It does not, if there's someone who is not doing good or not following your systems or your standards, it does not matter if firing them would put you understaffed. Fire them anyway because your A players are watching.
Yep.
And your A players are willing to step up. And so that's something that it's the knowing doing gap, right? It's like it's something that you should do. But man, sometimes when it's the holidays and you got three people that have been written up three times and you need to let them go, but you're like, what do I do? Because then I'm going to be working so much. Like, just work so much, or somebody else will come up. Like, it's never worth it to keep people around if they're not doing their part.
Yeah, here in Australia, a business is protected in the first 6 months. If you get rid of an employee in the first 6 months, they can't go you for unfair dismissal. Is it what is it in the US?
90-day.
Wow. Okay, 3 months. Yep.
Yeah. 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 Which is which you have we have had people act really good for 87 days.
Yeah.
Right. And then they show their true colors. So
What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
I think one, you have to be I think you as a owner, one, have to be a people person. I think you attract, I, I would have to say all of it kind of comes down to you, especially if you're on a small business, if you're your first round of hiring, all of that stuff, like you will attract who you are. And so work on yourself because the more happy, the more gleeful of a person you become, the better your outlook is, the more you're going to attract this. It's like the law of attraction, really, what it boils down to. And it's very true, especially for hiring. So look inward and make sure that you are someone worthy of working for.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
I don't believe in balance, period. I don't. I think it's a load of crap. It's just, it's like, do we want to win? Are we going to, like, when was the last time you watched a pro soccer player, football player, and you're like, oh, I wonder what his work-life balance is? Like, no, like, you need a different career.
How much professional development have you invested in yourself?
Oh, man. I mean, 6 figures in just like masterminds and stuff like that. Always learning. I mean, always reading books, getting in front of people. Yeah, I mean, unlimited amounts every day. If you don't learn something new every day, you're dying.
Yeah, I said to you before we hit record, because you haven't listened to any John Warrillow's Built to Sell books or Automatic Customer or Art of Selling Your Business and his podcast. I'll send those through to you because I think they'll be a great resource for, turning your mind to one day exiting and listening to all the mistakes other people have made.
Yeah, I'm excited about that too. Yeah,
Have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
I have. Yeah, and still do. We have some different advisors in the business. Actually, one of my core advisors, he was the one of the co-founders of Venmo. Um, you guys have Venmo
No, what
in
is it?
Australia? Venmo, they were bought by PayPal. They're like the biggest like Cash App, or like they're the biggest like money exchange app in the US.
Oh, yeah.
Um, um, but yeah, so him. I mean, one another person that helps with us. His name is Justin. He's grown a 50 plus. They're almost at 60 now. They're growing really rapidly now. Um, Restaurant system. Um, and so he's helped us. Started out in Philadelphia and continuing to grow. It's called Honey Row. So he's helped us by providing like his team for like different questions that we've had. And then you have like uh an older gentleman who was like Armstrong Flooring. He did all their mergers and acquisitions and like was the head like finance controller there for that side of things. And Armstrong was multinational, huge multi-billion dollar company. And so he's been a mentor to me since 2019 and spent a lot, hundreds of hours with him. And he's really taught me the foundations of the financial literacy on the business finance side of things.
Yeah. And do you have a board of directors or advisors? Like, with those advisors, do you meet formally regularly?
We don't meet formally regularly yet, but we just started building the formal advisory board. And so I mean, we talk over the phone all the time. We have our one advisor. Also, he was the CEO of a $8 billion grocer, and so he adds a lot of help when it comes to like what we're building. And he's just been through all of this stuff too. He started out working the register and moved his way up to CEO. And so to have somebody he's also very passionate about adoption and stuff. So.
That's great. I've written two LinkedIn articles a couple of years ago on building a board, either directors or advisors, and the second article's on the chair person role. So I'll send those through to you as well.
Okay.
All right, Doug, we're on our final five questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Market capture, I think, is really, you getting to scale is with each new level of scale, there's a certain release almost, I guess you could say. And so when you're starting, especially in a very competitive industry like we're in, it's a lot of uphill battles, right? And so that's the hardest thing is just getting people to know about you after you reach a certain once you getting to scale, whatever scale means to you. If you want to be known in your local town, like it's going to take 2 years probably for you to really become known and for everybody to try you minimum. I mean, in a town of 500,000 people, probably, right? And then so that's hard. I mean, everything's hard, but it's so rewarding too, and it's fun. It's like yeah, working out. Excuse me, working out is hard, but it's fun.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
I always said Think and Grow Rich. It it really unlocked like the mindset thinking, but I've also kind of since then learned about like the writer and all of that, and like how it was kind of a whole fraud and stuff, but the psychology of it works. So that I love. I also love the paradox of choice. I reference that a lot.
Haven't read that one yet. It's on
That's
the
a good
list.
one. That's a good one.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
So I was extremely into podcasts a ton for a long time, where I almost got overwhelmed with information and was having struggles with implementing. And so I actually cut back on podcasts and all media for the last year and a half or so. But I would say instrumentally, like especially for my industry, because there was a lot of like food and beverage founders on. How I built this was one of the most instrumental podcasts to like just having resources and knowing where to go and knowing what businesses to look into and grow from because they have again a lot of food and beverage people in there.
Now, I listened to one. I think it's the only one I've ever listened to. Just the other week, one of my clients here, she's got a great healthy dog food business, a subscription model, and the founder of Bark was on How I Built This with Guy Raz. It was quite an interesting story, and they've expanded out to they've even got flights for dogs now.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Oh wow.
they charter flights, so they fly them from New York to London and Paris and things like that. And it's yeah, they've really branched out.
Yeah, how I built this, I really liked how he put it. You know, it was a surface level, but the questions too
Mm.
were deep enough that you knew where to start and dig into if you were super interested into the story.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
I would say, yeah, TikTok Shop and Facebook ads, and then obviously it was social media, email, of course, too.
Oh yeah,
There's so many. One tool. Sorry, I'm breaking
yeah,
the rule here.
the money's in the list. The Direct Marketing
Yeah,
Association in America says for every $1 you invest in email marketing, you get $44 back. The next best is SEO at 22, and then after that's $20 for socials. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Finally, my favorite question: what would you tell yourself on day one of starting out 7 years ago?
Be patient. I think I would say. I would tell myself if we're not allowed to know the trajectory or how, because like 7 years ago, if I would have gone a lot harder into automation, like we did everything by hand and we didn't use automation or like big equipment to the point where we would, for instance, we had $20,000 a week of payroll that was then replaced by an $1,800 a month lease on a piece of equipment. But we were so afraid, like we so didn't understand like debt and like when debt is good that we were paying payroll for over a year instead of just getting the equipment. So one, I'd say automate right now, right away, take the loan on the equipment, get the automation done, and then two, patience. But yeah, I think we could have moved a lot faster with the automation because when we first started, we started towards the end of like the golden age of like pay-per-click advertising, and so we missed out on a lot just because of our inability to fulfill past what we were doing. I had to turn the ads off consistently.
Great. Thanks so much for your time today, Doug. Really enjoyed our chat. Congratulations to you and Sarah on the growth since 2018 over the last 7 years, starting with the two of you up to now 42 full-time equivalents, 6 or 7 stores, growing outside of Pennsylvania pretty soon, and 5 million top line this year, growing to 10 next year. It's phenomenal growth, starting with cookies, now doing ice cream and coffee. And I've really enjoyed our chat.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed our chat too.
And for our audience, we'd greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcast help with their growth will find us.